It looks like you have people from all over their state. That's great.
Yep.
And I'm sorry it's snowing in Fairmont.
And a shout out from Cynthia Bramer. Hi, Cynthia.
See what I mean? They're an awesome group. They just start chatting. It's wonderful. Everybody's muted. Yep. Except for us. I see there is a question already coming in for you, Ryan, but I know you're going to cover this in your presentation. So we'll address it after, but it's about freezing your credit.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, then I'm topical.
I particularly appreciate Kelsey's chat. Excited to learn more tonight. Woohoo! Me too. Yeah, there's one for you, Claire, coming in about fraud. So we're going to get to all of these.
I'd like to follow up with Julie Miller to all panelists. Cocktails, question mark.
Yes. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds or so because people are rolling in. We're up to, it's changing every 550, 552. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. People are still rolling in, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I just want to say hi, everyone. Woohoo! Good evening, Treasurer. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. I'm so excited to see everyone again. It's great to have so many of you back for tonight's topic. It's really important, and I said this in my email yesterday, fraud awareness and identity theft. The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves and our family from these scammers. So I'm really grateful to have you here. Before we get started, one, maybe two housekeeping items I want to talk about, and then a reminder. So Q&A, you guys are awesome. I love it. You're so chatty and you're so helpful to one another. Let's keep that up. But I want to separate the two areas. So all of this chat and saying hello and that kind of stuff, let's use the chat for that. And then actual questions that you have for me or the panelists, if you can use the Q&A for that, that will help us be able to get to them more quickly and not have to sift through all of the other stuff. So we'll see how that goes tonight, if we should use that coming forward. That was actually a suggestion from one of you. So thank you for that suggestion. We'll see how it goes. Second reminder, to see your attendance on the website, you have to log in. So if you just go to the website, you may not be logged in. And if you go to the webinars page, you're probably not logged in. If you click log in at the top right, use your email address and then the password you created or your forgot password function, and actually log in, it'll show your personal progress through the series. If it is incorrect, after you log in, let me know and I can double check it and correct it. And then lastly, don't forget to stay to the end. And we haven't had an issue with this at all. You guys have been so engaged and it's awesome. But we're giving away, again, 5 $50 prizes at random. So we'll do that at the end. These are Amazon gift cards and I will email them to you as soon as this is over. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to tonight's speakers. We have 2 experts for you this evening. First, we have Claire McHenry, Deputy Director, Securities Bureau with the Nebraska Department of Banking and Finance. She's a wonderful longtime partner for us, and she just has a wealth of knowledge. So she's going to talk about fraud awareness. And then we're going to go on to Ryan Sothen, Outreach Coordinator with the Nebraska Attorney General's Office. And Ryan is the absolute expert in identity theft. So he's responsible for developing and implementing all kinds of topical education initiatives. And he's incredibly witty to boot. So it'll be fun, I promise. So with that, let's get started. And Claire, why don't you take it away?
I can unmute. There we go. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and start sharing my slides. So just give me a minute. And share that. Is everyone able to see that? All right. Wonderful. So thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm very happy to be here to talk to you about fraud protection. First, we're going to be talking about common scams and frauds and how to spot them, and how scammers try to convince you how to give them your hard-earned money, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself. So I'm going to be talking to you about a lot of different types of scams, most of which are not going to look like specifically bank frauds or investment scams. So the real question is, why is somebody from the Department of Banking and Finance talking to you about scams? And the main reason is, if you're a victim, money is coming from your bank accounts and your retirement savings. And when something goes wrong, banks and firms and customers will often reach out to us to see if there's anything we can do. If it doesn't fall under our jurisdiction, we're going to work with customers to get them to the right people. Unfortunately, the reality is that once money has left the account, it's often extremely difficult for us to get it back. And the best way to protect your money from a scam or a fraud is to not give over your money in the first place. And that's why we're here to talk to you today. Before we begin, I'd like to start with a poll question. And so that question, I believe, will be coming up soon. There it is. How much money did consumers lose to a fraud in 2020? Was it 900 million, 1.7 billion, 3.3 billion, or $5 billion? And we'll just leave this open for a few seconds, and I'm just looking for your best guess.
They're rolling in.
They're rolling in. As you can see, regardless of what the answer is, it's a lot of money. And do you happen to know what our leading answer is at this point?
Right now, we have 48% of people are choosing 3.3 billion. I'm going to end it so you can see all the answers.
Well, they are very smart people and they are correct because according to the FTC, consumers reported losing more than $3.3 billion to fraud in 2020. The FTC collected 4.7 million reports from its own internal reporting, federal, state, and local law enforcement, the Better Business Bureau, industry members, and nonprofit organizations. It's also likely that the actual cost of fraud is higher as there are people who do not make any kind of report when they lose money in a fraud. And this doesn't even begin to capture the losses that are associated with fraud, such as lost wages to deal with the problem, sales of other assets to cover the loss, or the impact to the person, friends, and family, or even social services to assist when someone has lost needed income or retirement savings. So let's move on to common scams. Starting with the tech support scam. This is when someone who is posing as a legitimate computer technician or IT help desk tries to gain access to your computer. It may show up as a cold call or even a pop-up window while you're using your computer. They may claim to be a real company and will often claim that they have run a scan on your computer and found viruses or malware on it that need to be fixed immediately. What they're trying to do is sell you a useless service that won't actually do anything, steal your personal information like your password or your credit card number, or even gain access directly to your computer so they can install malware. The red flags of this are that it's an unsolicited call or pop-up. You didn't start the transaction. A reputable company is not going to cold call you. They ask for payment through a wire transfer or prepaid card or other cash-like transfer. And these are high pressure. Your computer and your information is in danger and you need to act now. The grandkids scam is unfortunately, we see one that is targeted towards our senior consumers. Someone is posing as your grandchild and calls you and tells you that it's an emergency and that they need money right away. Sometimes it's that they're in a foreign country and their passport and wallet have been stolen. Sometimes it's that they're in jail and they need money for bail. They tell you not to tell anyone because their parents will be angry. The red flags for this are that it's an unknown phone number or it could even be an email. The caller does not sound like your grandchild, and the request is unusual. It doesn't sound like something your grandkid would do, and you didn't know of any travel plans. And they tell you not to tell anyone. The best thing to do when this happens is to verify what's going on. Call your grandkid at a known number and ask, or ask someone else who might know what's going on. They ask for a wire transfer or prepaid card in order to pay for bail, which is not usually how jails work. And they tell you that you have to act now. They're trying to create that sense of urgency and not let you think about it. Unfortunately, we see too many people who are the victim of romance scams as well. This is someone who starts a relationship with you online. It could be a dating site, social media, or some type of community group like a church or a high school reunion. They will use a fake profile, pictures, and stories. They often have an excuse for why they can't see you in person. They work in another state or country or even the military. They talk to you a lot and build up a relationship, but then they ask for money, sometimes for a plane ticket or to pay a debt that they owe. The red flags are they're just too good to be true. You agree on absolutely everything. They like what you like, and they're just so attractive in the picture, you can't believe that this person who's perfect likes you. The relationship moves very fast. You chat every day, sometimes for hours, and it's only been a week, but it seems like you've known each other forever. And you start talking about traveling to meet and moving in together. But even though you chat every day, you still haven't been able to meet in person or even do a video chat. This is one of the first things I ask people to do if they don't fully believe they're actually involved in a romance scam, is ask for that video chat. They won't look or sound like what you're expecting, and so they won't do it. They don't want you to buy them that plane ticket or to pay their debt directly either. They ask for money, usually through a wire transfer or a prepaid card. Again, these are harder to trace. We've had already a question about the IRS scam. So even though it's tax time, we can see the IRS scams and Social Security scams anytime. And right now we're hearing about scams to get people's stimulus checks as well. They claim that you owe back taxes or that there's a problem with your Social Security account and that it's frozen. They threaten you and demand payment immediately to fix the problem. And sometimes they'll even claim to put you on with a supervisor, agent, or investigator if you have a question about what's going on. And one of the red flags that we have with the IRS scam is they first leave you a call, a pre-recorded message, a text, or even an email. This is not how the government is going to contact you when there's a problem with with the IRS or with the Social Security. There's going to be a letter. They also ask for a wire transfer or a prepaid card to pay fines, or they ask for a credit card or debit card to pay over the phone. Again, this is not how the government's going to ask you to pay. And they threaten you with legal action. They'll lock up your payments, or they could even threaten you with jail. This is not how the government is going to seek legal action against you. They'll go with proper written notification and due process. They're trying to make you afraid so that you won't think about it. And you have to act now. They don't want you to take time to think about it and ask questions about what is going on. If you're concerned that the email that you're receiving is real, I would suggest going to the website for the IRS and looking up a phone number independently of what they've given you and call them and verify. We've also seen complaints where people believe they've won a prize, the lottery, or the sweepstakes. You've won, but not yet. In order to collect your prize, you first need to pay taxes, fees, and possibly even custom duties because you've won a prize in another country. Often, as soon as you're done paying for one fee, there's another fee that you have to pay, and you need to pay now in order to collect, or that prize money is going away. Some red flags for this are that you won a contest that you didn't even enter. This is probably the biggest red flag. How can you win if you didn't even play? They send you a large check with your win notice. This is often used to entice you into believing that you hold something of real value. If you try to cash that check, you'll find that it's not real, and they'll often try to discourage you from trying to deposit it until you've paid all their fees so that you don't find out. And you have to pay in order to collect your prize. There's always an additional fee before you can collect. They'll also pose as government officials or government organizations. Often it's the IRS. In one case, after becoming involved, we tried to persuade someone that they hadn't actually won. Someone posed as the FBI to tell them that we were the real regulator imposters and to keep them, that we're keeping them from their winnings. So anytime you do have a question about whether or not you're speaking with somebody really from the government, look up their contact information independently from what they're giving you, and you can call and verify if it's a real person that you're speaking with. They're also telling you not to tell anyone. It's in their interest for this to be a secret. As soon as you tell someone, you get other people asking hard questions and telling you it's a scam. And they ask for a wire transfer or prepaid card to pay those taxes and fees. Again, that's not how the IRS works. They're telling you that you have to act now. They're creating a sense of urgency so that you don't think about it too hard. The money mule scam can be a little bit complicated. For some reason, because of a job offer you may have found online or through someone you've met, they want to send you money so that you can send it to someone else. Often it's a check that they ask you to cash and then wire to another party. They also tell you to keep a portion of it for your efforts. It sounds like easy money, but often that money was stolen and they're trying to get you to help move it. Or the check was worthless to begin with and they're just looking to get you to wire money to someone else. While the check may clear initially, you'll be on the hook to the bank to repay. There could also be legal consequences if you help move stolen money. The red flags to the money mule scam are that someone sends you money and asks you to send it on to someone else. They're asking you to be the mule. It seems like easy money. There's no real work needed to do it. They ask you to open a new bank account in order to transfer this money. They ask you for wire transfers and prepaid cards in order to transfer the money. Again, these are harder to trace. And they tell you to keep a portion of the money that you transfer. Investment fraud is where I have a little bit more ability to take enforcement action under the Securities Act of Nebraska. Investment fraud involves the sale of investments where the seller makes misleading statements or omissions about the investment or uses investor money to further a fraudulent scheme. It's not enough that the person doesn't directly lie to you, but they can't hide bad information either. This includes any information about that would be important to you in making an investment decision. The get-rich-quick schemes promise high returns with little to no risk. They can involve almost any type of investment product, from buying and selling interest in livestock to purchasing cryptocurrency and an initial coin offering. all investments carry risk. Whenever someone is telling you that the investment is guaranteed or a sure thing, you know they aren't being truthful with you. The seller may also pose as a licensed professional. You should always check out whether that person pitching an investment to you is registered and their background. And this picture is our friend, Charles Ponzi. He was so famous for what he did that he managed to have an entire scam named after him. A Ponzi scheme is where the promoter uses new investor money to pay off old investors to keep them happy, or to buy off people with too many questions. So long as the promoter can find new investors, they can keep the Ponzi scheme going. These types of schemes can go on for a long time, but they always end up collapsing after they run out of new investors. Affinity fraud is where someone poses as a member of a particular group in order to gain that group's trust. I've seen it happen where a person poses as a member of a church in order to take advantage of an entire congregation, or where the person takes advantage of others in their ethnic community. Using that position of trust, they ask for investments. And because they're in your circle, you're less likely to ask questions. Many of our biggest cases involving fraud, investment fraud, involve people and businesses that have never been registered with us. They use high pressure sales tactics to get you to invest right away. Unsolicited calls from people you've never met telling you about once in a lifetime opportunities that usually are held just for their friends and family. And their guaranteed returns and tell you there's no or low risk. Remember, all investments carry risk. And it's also important to be cautious about designations. That can be the string of letters after a person's name or title. Sometimes people will use a designation or a certification as a reason for you to work with them or to give them money. They have special knowledge about your financial situation that makes them an expert on what they are telling you and why you should invest with them. Some designations are good indications of knowledge, training, and experience. Others can be purchased with a few hours of online training or a weekend seminar. There are a lot of designations out there, so it's important to do your research on what these designations actually mean. My suggestion is go to finra.org. They have compiled a list of designations in their education, experience, and ethical standards. It won't tell you if it's a good or a bad designation. That's going to be a judgment call on your part, but it will help you do your homework. Red flags of a questionable designation can include claims to provide specialized advice to seniors and/or retirement. We're particularly concerned when a designation is targeted towards seniors, especially if they don't require a lot of education or experience. It's also a red flag if the designation doesn't take it a lot to either get it through education and experience or to keep it through continuing education or ethical standards to kick out bad actors. And it's also a red flag if you can't even make a complaint against the person who's holding the designation. So now we're going to talk about how these scammers convince you to take your money and give it to them. It would be really nice if we could just tell by looking at someone whether they were a good guy or a bad guy. They're not going to go around wearing a black hat or give you a business card that says scammer. They're going to try to look like someone you can trust that you'd be happy to hand your money to and won't ask too many questions. So let's take a look at this man. His name is Alan Stanford. He looks clean cut, like he has some money. He looks pretty much like what we think of when we think of someone who runs a company or gives investment advice. But looks can be deceiving. He looks a little less trustworthy here. Bernie Madoff may have been a bit more famous, but Alan Stanford hurt a lot of people. He was an American Antiguan banker that was convicted in 2012 of perpetrating a $7 billion Ponzi scheme that involved certificates of deposit against nearly 50,000 international and domestic investors. In addition to grossly misrepresenting what he was doing with investor money, he's also suspected of possibly dealing with Mexican drug cartels. So let's learn a little bit about our scammer. It's lucrative for them. They're in this to make money. For some, there's also the thrill of it. They also know the saying that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Understand that good manners does not mean good intentions. And the more that you reveal about yourself, the more information that you're giving to them that they can use against you to convince you to invest. They will try to answer your questions, and good scammers will have a question for everything. We've had one example of a scam where it was very sophisticated, and they had just every answer you could possibly imagine. It was a sweepstakes scam and they should call Publishers Clearinghouse. Well, they just happen to have Publisher Clearinghouse's number on them. They should call the FBI. Well, they happen to have the FBI's phone number with them. It was all very, very nice that they could answer every single question that our person had. But they'll also use multiple influence tactics against you. So what are influence tactics? These are just tools that people use every day to convince others to take an action. Alone, they're neither good nor bad. It's all about how people use them. But the more we understand what they are, the more we can see when they're being used against us and whether they are influencing us to do something we wouldn't normally do. This is a list of the different kinds of influence tactics, and it can look complicated. But what it really boils down to is fear, greed, authority, and urgency. You've probably already been able to spot a few of these from the red flags we've already talked about. Fear can include fear of missing out, or that you need to do what everyone else is doing, such as social consensus. It could also mean that you're afraid of that person and what they may do if you don't hand over your money, like threatening you with lawsuits or even jail time. Greed or phantom fixation is your desire to make money. This is a strong emotion and drives a lot of what we do. Scammers know that and will dangle the possible reward in front of us and make it so that we don't want to ask questions. And they want to either act in a position of authority or convince us what to do, or point us to other sources, experts in similar products, to make them seem more legitimate. They can point us to others in our social circle too, who we trust, who may have already invested. And finally, they don't want us to take too long to think about it, so they create a sense of urgency. Their time is limited and this offer is scarce. We have to act now. So there is some good news. There are things that you can do to help protect yourself. The first of what you're doing right now, learning about scams and what to do. And that brings us to our next poll question. A lot of the scams that we've seen have a red flag of an unsolicited call. So what's the best way to handle an unwanted call? Ask them to speak to a supervisor. Make sure that you don't say the word yes. Push the pound key over and over again, or don't answer the phone. And just so you know, these are all answers that I've had told me of what people like to do when they get an unwanted call.
There's so many of them. They're rolling in.
They're rolling in.
Hello.
So I'll give them a few minutes to let them do that. So I know that I get a lot of unwanted calls, and unfortunately scammers do ignore that do not call registry and the rules about when you can and cannot call. And unfortunately, technology also allows scammers to spoof numbers that look local or legitimate. So
you ready?
do we have, yep, we're good. Do
Yep.
we have the answer?
Here we go.
Do not answer the phone, 82%. I'm very proud of this group because that is the right answer. Don't answer an unknown number. If it's real, they're going to leave a message. And I know this can be hard for some people, especially of our parents or in an older generation. They've been taught to be polite and answer the phone and not be rude, but it really is the best way to avoid these types of calls. If you have picked up the phone, just hang up when you realize it's not legitimate. Don't press numbers or try to talk to someone to get off the list. Asking to speak to a supervisor or pressing keys lets them know it's an active phone number and you will be called even more. And consider call blocking features and services. A lot of cell phones and phone services have this built in or available for a cost. And if you, or particularly a parent or grandparent, receive a lot of calls and it's hard to track, call blocking features may be a good solution. And put yourself on the do not call registry. I know I just said that scammers are going to ignore this registry, but you should still get on it. It means that you have a better idea that if someone's calling you about your extended warranty, you know it's not a legitimate call. It's also important to understand that how you pay is important, really important. Credit cards have a lot of built-in fraud protection, while cashier checks, gift cards, and money wires are like cash and are harder to trace and figure out where they're going. Scammers like that because they don't want to be traced. And unfortunately, more and more, we're even seeing that scammers are asking people to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in order to make payments to them. which can be very difficult to trace as well. So what you can do is don't send money using cashier checks, gift cards, or money wires to someone you don't know. And slow down. Always take your time. And it's okay to talk to someone you trust if you don't understand what someone is asking you to do. It's also important to do your homework and check out your investment professional's background, or if anyone who's offering you an investment, to check and see if they're registered. And this can be done by calling us at the Department of Banking and Finance or going to brokercheck.finra.org. We can verify whether someone is registered, what they're allowed to do based on their registrations and examinations, their experience, and whether they have a disciplinary history. And this is all information that's publicly available and just takes a few minutes to find. No one ever thinks they're going to fall for a scam, but the reality is that it could happen to anyone. In fact, victims of investment fraud tend to score higher on financial literacy tests, have more education and income, and are more self-reliant and optimistic. And this makes sense. Scammers go where the money is. If you're self-reliant and have high education, you may be really smart in one area of your life, but may be overconfident in your understanding of investments. You may be willing to believe promises about high returns and low risk, and importantly, you're not going to ask for help. If we think it can't happen to us, we may not be on guard and see the red flags when they do happen. I'd like to make a special note about helping our aging parents. They may be especially vulnerable to scams and financial losses. One of the first abilities we lose as we age is the ability to make complex financial decisions. Our parents are receiving cold calls from unknown people, and people are asking them for money. And when they lose money to a fraud, they don't have time to make it back. And often it is the children who have to step in and help. One of the things we've also been really worried about with COVID is the impact of social isolation on this group too. It increases their vulnerability. They're lonely and given new technology to talk with family and friends without really understanding how it works and what it means when people they don't know connect with them on it. So it's really important to talk to them and stay connected and involved as much as we're able. Talk to them about their finances and new people in their lives. And I know this can be even more difficult right now, but it's also more important than ever that we try. Fundamentally, when it comes to protecting yourself, there's some steps that you can take. And some of these can feel rude and go against our nature and what we've been taught to as we're growing up, but they will help us to be on guard. Be less trusting, less polite, be skeptical, ask questions, ask even more questions, and understand what risk you're willing to take with your money and what your financial goals are. If you're given an option to invest in something, get it in writing and slow down. A good deal will be there tomorrow. But frankly, the best piece of advice that I can give you, if you only remember one thing from what I've been speaking about, is this. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Nothing we ever do ever comes for free, and there's always a risk to investment. So what do you do if you do have a complaint or a question or a concern? Is you can, of course, call us at the Department of Banking and Finance. If we're not the right place, we're going to help you find out where to go. I also recommend our friends at the Consumer Protection Division at the Nebraska Attorney General's Office. They have a website with a lot of great information at protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov. You can also contact your local law enforcement on their non-emergency line, or you can reach out to our federal partners at the Federal Trade Commission or the FBI. And are there any other questions?
There are some questions. I'm going to have you stop share and we'll get Ryan on to sharing his screen, but I'll feed you a couple of questions while that process is occurring, okay?
Sounds great.
There's actually quite a few. So, if you've received a call from the SSA saying your Social Security Administration number has been compromised, but you can tell it's a recording, do you just hang up, or is there something else I should do?
I would hang up on that call. And if you're really concerned that that's whether or not that's a legitimate call, I would look up the Social Security Administration's office phone number directly from their website, call their office, and confirm whether or not that's true.
Does the no-call list include text messages, or how do you get out of the mass texting groups? Lately, it's been terrible.
I have been part of some of these mass texting groups and also mass FaceTime groups. And I don't believe that the do not call registry includes texting or FaceTime. I've usually just worked on blocking those particular numbers as they come. I personally use my phone's silence feature to silence all unknown calls. If it's not part of my contact list, I just don't get the call. It goes directly to voicemail, and then I can decide whether or not I want to return it. If I'm expecting an important call from like an unknown number, like a doctor's office, I'll turn it off for that period of time. But usually they'll just leave a message and I'll call them right back.
I have older family in other states. Do the Nebraska websites cover brokers elsewhere too?
The FINRA, brokercheck.finra.org is a national registry so that you can look up anybody across the country who is registered. So that will cover people in other states as well.
I think we answered this one with your resources slide, but where do you go if you want to report a possible scam happening?
You can contact, I would say contact, Brian is pointing to him. I would say contact the Attorney General's office. I know they are very interested in that. You can also contact local law enforcement, but I would also would point to Brian Sothen's office.
Two of the same call, and I think somebody shared this in the chat, but what's the URL for the do not call registry?
I would have to look that up, but I can find it.
Okay, I think it's do not call, something like that, but that'd be awesome. We'll get it in the chat here in a minute.
It is do not call.org.
There you go.
Pardon me, gov. Do not call.
Gov.
Gov.
How you doing, Ryan, on sharing?
Oh, I'm just about there.
Okay, I'm going to keep going then. Oh, I think we're good. All right, so we'll pause on the questions and we'll continue that after Ryan concludes his portion.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Claire, appreciate it. Good info.
Blue screen, everyone, with our imprimatur and identity theft, protecting yourself at work, home, and play.
Yep.
Good, all righty. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Great job, Claire. That will actually save me from going over scams in one of my slides because you hit the most prevalent. But to those of you who are home and have tuned into the news, you've been tuning into the Derek Chauvin verdict, guilty on all 3 counts. And I think that's going to push the Attorney General's office out of the news today, but I wanted to share with you, we had some excitement here at the Capitol. I don't know that it made it down to the Treasurer's wing. So Treasurer Moranti, you might not have heard of this, but we had our favorite petitioner petitioning the Attorney General's office today, a gentleman who dressed up as the Energizer Bunny and kept banging his drum. And the Attorney General himself, General Peterson, a very patient man, lost his patience, came to me and asked me to do something about the Energizer Bunny in our hallway. And so I huddled quickly with Capitol Security and asked that we press charges of 3rd-degree assault. They thought I was crazy, rightfully so, because who in their right mind is going to believe that the Attorney General or I or anyone here would feel threatened, much less menaced by a bunny? And 3rd-degree assault sounds formidable, sounds intimidating, but it actually means just that, acting in a threatening or menacing manner. So no one would believe that the Attorney General was threatened or menaced. So I tossed it back to them and said, fine, what would you charge them with? And we conferred on the charges and were successful in charging the Energizer Bunny with the only charge that we could make stick. We charged him with battery. So I will now let the uproarious laughter subside.
Okay, I'll unmute myself just so you can hear it.
Our participation count has suddenly dropped from 755 to, half that. I don't know. But I lead with a joke because identity theft is no laughing matter and we need a little bit of levity. Otherwise, I become a Debbie Downer in the presentation. Identity theft is the nation's #1 consumer complaint. It is, in fact, the crime of the century, this relatively young 21st century, because since 2000, it has been the nation's #1 complaint, according to the Sentinel report from our friends at the Federal Trade Commission. Here in Nebraska, it is a close second to imposter scams, but imposter scams, many of which were covered by Claire, are actually a means to an end, and that end ultimately is identity theft. So what is identity theft? It's the unauthorized use of your personal information for a variety of purposes, mainly to make purchases or get some type of benefit, file fraudulent tax returns, or commit other forms of fraud. And as you can
Ryan,
see,
I'm sorry, can you push that from the beginning button? It'll make it bigger so people can see it.
from the beginning.
Yep. So slideshow is already highlighted, far left corner yeah.
Okay, because I have it full size on my screen. What are you all seeing?
We're seeing all your notes on the side, all the slides, little and a small.
Well, how wonderful.
And if not, that's okay. Just keep going.
Just a second. You might be looking at a different screen, so.
Mhm.
Did that work?
Now we're seeing how to stop robocalls.
Really?
Yeah, maybe
Oh,
stop.
okay, that's my main monitor.
Mhm.
I think you'll find that page helpful. That's on CNET. That's literally everything under the sun as we wait for the TRACE Act, the Telephone Robocall Abuse Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act, to be fully operational against VoIP and cell network starting July 1. So I've hit from the beginning. This is the best I can do, I'm afraid, Jennifer. So it might be small, but I'll continue on. I was just clearing what identity theft is and the elements of personal information that are involved in identity theft. And it really pivots on your Social Security number. But as I had indicated in my setup comments, it has been the nation's most filed complaint for the duration of this relatively young century. Last year, identity theft accounted for virtually 1 out of every 2 complaints, not quite, almost. A doubling in identity theft complaints last year over the previous year. COVID had a clear impact, but there were other factors involved as well, one of which may have been the FTC move to an easier form of reporting. So we just might get reporting catching up to the actual incident rate of identity theft. But what we saw overwhelmingly was government document and benefit fraud, and this was led by a near 3,000% increase in unemployment insurance claims, fraudulent unemployment insurance claims. So if you have received a notice, not just from the Nebraska Department of Labor, but any of the other 49 states departments indicating that your benefit request had been approved, had been denied, had been extended, whatever, it is not an error. It is, in fact, a red flag warning of identity theft active and underway in your life. So please contact this office. We'd be happy to help you further, or reference our identity theft consumer guide, which I'll be plugging again later in the presentation. Just behind government document and benefit fraud was what we can all anticipate, which is credit card fraud. I think that's easier to see. I hope it's easier to see. In this next slide, this is a histogram indicating what is driving identity theft. And if you can see the cursor, government document and benefit fraud was at 30%. I mentioned unemployment insurance, but it's also our means-tested welfare benefit programs, such things as, temporary assistance to needy families, supplemental nutrition and assistance, Social Security disability, et cetera. But following right behind it, 29%, was credit card fraud. This is where the thief, in possession of your personal information within a matter of hours, 24 to 72 hours typically at most, is already online applying for as many Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, department store cards as possible. And in fact, when you consider that financial institutions today are moving more and more into e-storefronts rather than brick and mortar, you can look at this 29% credit cards, the 7% for new bank accounts, and the 18% for loan and lease fraud, and see that about 54% of all identity theft is really motivated by cash and cash now. So government documents and benefits takes the lead, grabbed the headlines this year. It's really unemployment insurance driven, but the desire for cash is really what is motivating the thief. What happened there? Oh.
Let's find out if anybody's been a victim of identity theft.
Very good. I don't have that pop up. There we go.
I'll do that.
As prompted, How many of you have ever been a victim of identity theft? The incident rate varies between 5 to 7%, but if your name or account number has been involved in a breach, you're 8 times more likely to become a victim of identity theft. So, anxious to
Wow.
see what
I'm
the
gonna go ahead
numbers
and
are
pull-
rolling in, and about 2/3 of you, 65%, are indicating that you've not been a victim of identity theft. That's good news. The bad news, Debbie Downer that I can be, is that it's no longer a question of if, but when. And so we are going to go through constructive steps that you can take to minimize your risk of being a victim of identity theft. So moving on, there we go. This slide always grabs people's attention because we increasingly, particularly as more and more of our life is managed online, we think that our thief is a stranger to us. And it's exactly the opposite. 2/3 of the time, our identity thief is someone that we know, work with, or frequent their business. You can see from the bottom, 1 out of every 3 thieves is a direct family member or relative, followed closely at 18% by a friend, a neighbor, or an in-home employee. So this can be someone who might be your pet sitter, babysitter, elder care provider, house cleaner, but someone who you've brought in a trust relationship, and the minute you're absent, they violate that trust, going through your personal effects and copying the information that they need. Then you can see that we have the 4% at our workplace, and it does not matter if you're retired. Most of us, even in our retirement, still have voluntary board memberships and meetings that we might attend, or we have part-time work. But thankfully, it's a small percentage of our co-workers, either full-time, part-time, or volunteer time. And then we have the 13% at a business that we frequent. This can be the doctor's office, the attorney's office, the CPA, but somewhere where your information is on file. And as we know from the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, thieves love to attack mid-sized to small-sized business because protections are fewer and the system's simpler to crack to get a treasure trove of information. So 2/3 of the time, we know our thief. The other times, it tends to be a stranger, someone else, most likely through data breaches. Now, they get our information a variety of ways. There's still no substitute for plain old-fashioned stealing. That can be a pickpocket, a purse snatch, stealing even your mail, or dumpster diving by stealing your garbage in hopes that you do not shred your mail, for example, those solicitations for new credit cards that you might be receiving. As Claire covered, and I'll mention in terms of imposter scams, still tricking you over the telephone or by email, a technique known as phishing, spelt with a PH, is still extraordinarily popular. But I'd like to draw your attention here to unsecured internet transactions. More and more, we look at public Wi-Fi as one of our God-given natural rights. And if it's available, we're going to jump on. Please know that in virtually all settings, and this includes for you road warriors, hotel settings, that almost all public Wi-Fi is unsecured. Surf to your heart's content. But if you're going to be signing on to your banking account, for example, I recommend that you do so over a secured connection, perhaps using a VPN or virtual private network connection. And if you do not have a secured connection, and I'll show you an indication in an upcoming slide of what is a secured connection, you would be better to hop off the Wi-Fi and burn some of your data plan on your cell phone or on your cellular activated tablet to make that transaction, because it will give you greater confidence that the information that you're passing is in fact secure. So protecting your identity at work, you should know, and this is the Verizon of cell phone fame, but for the past 11 years, they have really moved forthrightly into data breaches, and they have become the gold standard with their annually released investigatory report, which comes out every May. So this information is now approaching 1 year old, but for 2019, as reported in mid-spring of 2020, there were just under 4,000 confirmed breaches, with 70% of those breaches by bad actors led by organized crime. Again, the third bullet, money is the root of all evil. It's the driver of most data breaches for the reasons that I shared in the histogram, in terms of not just the government documents and benefits, but the free credit, the free loan lease, and the bank accounts. So moving on, there we go. Data breaches by industry, you might be interested in who's being hit the hardest. Healthcare still is the treasure trove of personal identifying information. Throughout the 11 years of the Verizon data breach report, healthcare has always been in the lead, followed relatively closely by financial institutions, both brick and mortar and e-storefront. And since we are really a audience of government employees, you should see that our exposure has actually gone down. You may not be able to see that, but I know from looking at previous reports that public entities at 11% now is getting back to normal, as opposed to previous years when it had been as high as healthcare, but healthcare itself, back when we were at 16%, was around 20%. So generally speaking, by industry, the breach trends are moving in the right direction. We're seeing less overall, but healthcare is still the primary treasure trove. So be very careful to make sure that your information is protected and secure at your doctor's office, at the hospital, or wherever you get healthcare. Now, what you can do in your business, and this can be a large business, it can be a personal business, your subchapter S corporation, if you've decided to run one, it's really a mantra. Take stock, scale down, secure it, pitch it, and plan ahead. Know what information you have on hand. And quite frankly, folks, data is so compact that we are all, to a person, pack ratty with our data. We have far more data than we actually need. So take an inventory of what you're receiving and what you're sending across all mediums, and especially mobile mediums. Are you accessing work files from home on your smartphone, for example? So take stock of the personal information in your possession or that you're transmitting or retaining. Then keep only what you need. It sounds simple, but there are retention guidelines that should be managed and maintained. Keep nothing beyond that retention guideline. And more information is available on all 5 of these steps from the FTC, who has an outstanding booklet on these principles themselves. Now, protecting your identity at home and at play. How would you know if you're a victim of identity theft? Well, look for things that are out of the ordinary. What is unusual? Perhaps there are unexplained withdrawals on your bank account, or bills that have come like clockwork are suddenly missing in your mail. But I would point to 2 things. One, this bottom bullet, a notification from the Internal Revenue Service that more than one tax return has been filed attached to your name. Those notices could be coming to you now, because the identity thieves typically are first filers in the annual tax filing season, because the average tax return for an American is in the neighborhood of $3,000, ranging from about $2,900 to a high of $3,300. If we said $3,000 at an average, and someone goes onto the dark web, buys a block of Social Security numbers from the Equifax data breach 4 years ago, they can sit down and complete as many fraudulent tax returns as they can possibly get done in the course of a day, each one drawing an average of $3,000, and enrich themselves handsomely at your expense. You'll be the late filer. Most of us file in that last 4 weeks, really in the last 2 weeks. And so it's not that you won't get your return, but your return will be delayed. That's an absolute red flag if you hear from the IRS. Otherwise, unfamiliar accounts on your credit report. One of the top things that we can do after we freeze our credit is to routinely pull our credit reports. And you should know that during COVID, instead of an annual free look at your credit, that the 3 credit bureaus combined through their managed website known as annualcreditreport.com is giving us all weekly access to our credit reports. So I encourage all of you to look at your credit reports more often than you have in the past and look for inquiries, new inquiries for credit that you don't recognize as having been made by you. They're unfamiliar, they're surprise notifications. So things that you can do. Some of these may seem simple, others not, but I will tell you from that data breach investigations report that 70% of the successful exploits with corporations were because of passwords that were plain, simple, dictionary-based, common words. We need to strengthen and lengthen our password protects across all of our accounts. There is a great website to help you in this regard. It is known as My One, that's the numeral 1, myoneLogin.com, My One Login. And under the menu on the top right of the page under references, you will find that they have a password strength checker. And it will allow you to type in any length password, and then it will give you in a reverse stop-like fashion, red being bad, yellow being fair to good. You could be stronger, but this will protect you for a week or two, and then green for go. And then it will give you in a measure of time, measured in days, weeks, months, years, centuries, how effective that password is. Right now, I think the password on this state-issued machine is right around 800 and some odd years strong, according to My One Login. You can beat that, but I'm very happy to have an 800 year tested password. Now, other things that you can do: don't give out your personal information over the internet, or if you didn't originate the call, don't give out the information on the phone. When I say don't give out personal information over the internet, this also applies to you people who are overly chatty and sharing in social media. Ladies, I would encourage you to keep your maiden names not posted, the year of your birth not posted, simply because that becomes very powerful information in the hands of an identity thief. Then, and I will hit this point at least 2 more times in the presentation, if you're going to be on public Wi-Fi, again, surf to your heart's content, but if you're passing sensitive information, if you're accessing your financial accounts, either jump off the free Wi-Fi and burn data on your data plan, or preferably make a secure connection through a virtual private network offering. And I'll show you how you can search and select the best VPNs for you. Then, by all means, and I have another slide coming up on this, freeze your credit report. Most of us freeze our credit report after the fact, after the horse has left the barn. It does us little good when we've already had our personal information compromised. So from our office's perspective, mine especially as outreach coordinator, the recommendation is to have the default state of your credit report be frozen rather than the exception state. All of us should freeze our reports. It can be temporarily thawed if we need to have new credit issued, for example, to buy a new car or finance a kid's education, what have you, and then have it refreeze. But the default state of the credit report is highly recommended now to be frozen. Now, being aware of phishing schemes, also known as imposter scams, Claire did a very good job of introducing the majority of the most popular scams in Nebraska, but follow the storyline. There's always a story to be told, with a storyline that is either too good to be true or too bad to be believed. And with urgency applied, you are required to take immediate action, either to claim that good news prize or to forestall that bad news potential of, for example, being arrested because your information has been attached to a crime. So I'm not going to dwell on the imposter scams today, other than to, and I've done it again, I'm confounding myself here, other than to acknowledge These four, you can see Claire covered all of them, but I will say that today alone, I handled calls in all four of these imposter scam areas. And I am screening all consumer complaints to this office now. So I can say that every one of these was active today. Two other scams that I do want to make you aware of that can lead to identity theft as well, that are also frequent and that I'm hearing of them daily. Pet scams. A lot of us being home and alone are lonely, and rather than being able to see our friends other than via Zoom, we're inviting pets into our lives, and we go looking for those pets online, and I cannot tell you how many fraudulent pet sites there are where people are paying good money, $800 or more, for a puppy, for a kitten, for a bird, or thousands for a horse, for example, only to find that there is no such animal, there is no such business. The other thing is if you've had a notice by email, by telephone call, or by SMS text message from Amazon, and it is Amazon saying that their fraud department is contacting you for suspicious activity within your account and asking you to verify, every single one of those attempts is fraudulent. And so just ignore, trash, call our office if you're in a moment of doubt, or contact Amazon directly. They have a marvelous chat client that can allow you to validate that that in fact is a scam, not the real Amazon. So how do you know if you're on a secure website? Here are the four major what's the word I'm looking for? Browsers. And Internet Explorer is pretty much gone the way of the dodo. It's now Edge, but they all share key elements in common when you're on a secure website. This is the URL section, the Uniform Records Locator, what you know as the web address, where you might be typing in the web address. If you're going to be on a secure site, make sure that HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, has an S after it when you are checking out, for example, and you're about to enter your payment information, or you're signing into your banking or checking account. S means secure. And that means that the data is encrypted so that prying eyes cannot see the sensitive information that you're sharing. Then either at the end of the URL web address or at the beginning, you're going to see a padlock, and that padlock will be closed. Most of us are on Google Chrome, at least 40 to 50% of us use Google Chrome. The padlock is at the beginning of the URL in Google Chrome. If you're an old Internet Explorer user, for example, their padlock was always at the end, but beginning or end, look for the padlock. Then there are two encryption standards. The older encryption standard, when you're on a secure connection, would go green. This is known as secure socket layer. And if it's SSL encryption on your website, you'll have not only the S and the padlock, but the white background will go to green. That means all things are a go. Now, keeping your information safe online begins with keeping a clean machine. That means updating your machine so that you're using the latest operating system recommended by the manufacturer, the latest security software, and even the latest web browser. If you have any question, all of this information can be found online through a simple search. But also make sure that you're doing this on your smartphones. I believe that the iPhone is at 14.4.4. It's about to go to 14.5. And that if you're an Android user right now, the operating system is 11. Make sure you are on those two contemporary standards and automate this so that you're either proactively notified or it's happening in the background as you sleep. Then I mentioned a VPN. Virtual private networks are very important for today's mobile data users, especially over public Wi-Fi. And I told you that I'd give you a hint on how to find the best VPN. Go to your web browser and simply type in best VPN services and the year. You can also do this for best antivirus software, best malware protection. whatever it is you're searching for in the current year, you're going to find two gold standards. One is PC Magazine, and the other is CNET, which is managed by CBS, a Viacom company. But they will give you ratings from their editors and their user communities so that you can then review by editors' comments, public perception, and price what is the best fit for you in your circumstances. These are routinely updated, and I find them to be genuine fail-safes. I really like the recommendations of both PC Magazine and CNET. Now, the security freeze. I make the case that if there's one thing, only one thing that you can do that is going to amp up your overall protection from identity theft, here it is. It is the security freeze. This is the first thing that any of the name brand identity theft protection services do within day one of you signing up for their service. They take over the process of the security freeze and the ordering of your free credit reports. You can do it yourself for free. It's basically a directive from you to each of the three credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, that prohibits them from releasing your credit report and score without your prior knowledge and therefore express authorization. It's now easy. It used to be difficult because it was only by mail, and really it needed to be by certified mail because you were passing confidential information, including your SOCH. Today you can do it by telephone and you can do it online. It should take no more than 5 minutes per agency. So within 15 minutes, 20 at the extreme, you can have relatively fail-safe protection for yourself. And again, it is free. And if you freeze your report in conjunction with the routine monitoring of your credit reports, you are going to have the best do-it-yourself protection on par with what you get for $100 to $150 a year from the name brand identity protection providers. Here's a little bit of news for you. Where we've seen a lot of growth in identity theft is through phone and utility fraud, where someone is going to take your personal information and use it to go out and buy a new expensive iPhone or two. You should know that the proliferation of digital devices, especially into the hands of teenagers, has put a real tax on the frequency with which a credit report is looked at. And so the credit reporting agencies have offloaded the review of credit worthiness from the big three to an entity known as the National Consumer Telecommunication and Utilities Exchange. They call themselves the NCTUE. Most everyone I know calls them NC2. Just to give you an idea, they have their own freeze, which is also free. This information, by the way, is on the inside back cover of our Identity Theft Consumer Guide. This is the copy of the guide. It was just updated last month and has come off the press as of last week. So if you'd like the latest, greatest, you can download it on our website or call the office and ask for a copy to be sent to you. But this is the NCTUE site. So National Consumer Telecommunications Utilities Exchange, and under their frequently asked questions, you can learn about the data report, also known as a disclosure report. This needs to be frozen. Here's the telephone number right here, toll-free, and you can affect that, and this is important that you do. In the money muling that Claire talked about, one of the first things that the thief does is use your credentials to go out and buy a large number of fraudulent digital devices. So with that, and keeping a close watch on time, contacting us through our website, protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov. Everything on identity theft in detail is under this third button right here. Under resources, if you can see where I'm pointing, this is where you would go to get the Identity Theft Consumer Guide. You can file a complaint, our first button here, that comes directly to me, as does schedule a presentation, that comes to me as well. And if you'd like to talk personally, our main number is 2682, but my direct phone extension here at the Capitol is 3878. And typically I am back to you, if not within the day, within 48 hours. And as I travel, you should know that all of my voicemails are translated to email, so I can pick them up directly from the road. So there's never the excuse that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get your message. So please let me hear from you if you have a question or a concern. Otherwise, I thank you for your time tonight, and I am very happy to entertain questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, so much. There's so much in the chat. Just thank you. Such good information. And a lot of the questions that were coming in, you answered. So one of them was about paying for identity theft protection. Is it worth it? So you just answered that one. One of them was about the cost for credit freeze. So you just answered that one. So I think we're good, but I do want, yeah, there's still lots of thank yous coming in, but we need to announce our winners for tonight. So I have that information. So the 5 Amazon gift card winners for tonight are Tracy Ross from State of Nebraska Military Department. That was Tracy Ross. Susan Kelly from Morrill County, Mike Brothers from Nebraska State Patrol, Kelsey Walden from Department of Health and Human Services, La Vista office, and then Bradley Boyum from West Point, Cunning County Sheriff's Office. So congratulations to each of you. I will send you a gift card here in a moment. And with that, thank you both, Claire, Ryan, appreciate it. It's fabulous information. Thank you so much. And we will see you all next week on planning for children and planning for college expenses. Really good topic for next week too, because they're expensive. So with that, have a great evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good night.